Are you training hard enough at the gym? Is a question that I constantly ask myself. And if I look in the mirror, honestly, not hard enough most of the time. And that was highlighted by having the pleasure of collabing with Geoffrey Verity Schofield here in China for a week. And I had an absolute masterclass in intensity, what real effort is. And I've collabed with a lot of people. I've trained with a lot of people over the past 10 years of doing this professionally. You hands down work the hardest on a per set basis with consistent intensity that is actual effort, not performative effort, because you can yell and scream, it looks cool on social media, but you're working so hard that the rep speed is slowing down. That can't be cheated. You look like you're in a different planet when you're exercising. I don't know what's going through your mind, but I'd love to get into that with the intensity side of things. And what true failure is, I've learned through collabing with you. So first of all, thanks for me, and the audience I'm sure can see this and start to put it together.
It's something, well, thank you. And I would say your effort was not bad either. It was fantastic actually, you know? And so I could even see you adjusting things on a set-by-set basis based on either watching the set that I did, or if it's something I said, okay, you're sandbagging this part in order to get to this part. And so I think, you know, seeing that very rapid adaptation process was awesome to see, because sometimes you give someone advice and it takes them like a long time to make the adjustments. But for you, it's like, all right, one set, this set to this set, done. And so, yeah, that was super impressive to see, because often it does take a long time, but you were like, yeah, you were on it.
Because I come from a more general strength background where it's all about technical failure. Right. You're working hard enough to the point where you begin to break down your form, right, or you lose some range of motion on the final rep.
Yep.
This bodybuilding failure is completely different. And we spoke about it. It becomes the RBF. Reps beyond failure, yep, become the important ones, because at the surface, I knew that you have to reach muscular failure where you can barely do any reps of the exercise. But I was still kind of sandbagging it if I look honestly, and this is just going into the details. I'm sure I'm still working hard, yep, but I wanted to get the most out of it. So case in point, on those final few reps, I'd come up really quickly and then control the eccentric. But what's been really powerful training with you is putting effort into the failure reps. So you come up, you almost try and do a isometric pause, and then come down. Another one, it'll probably be not as high. 3 or 4 of those is much better than, oh look, I've reached technical failure,
Yeah, quality over quantity when it comes to the number of sets you're doing, but also the difficult parts of the set, because those are the most important parts. The difficult parts of the reps, and then the difficult part of the sets. So if you're doing a set, and let's say you're doing an upright row, okay, it's gonna be most difficult in that top contracted position. So you're going, they're slowing down, you can feel it. I mean, I can feel it now because we did it yesterday. And that was just 2 sets we did, right? And you're getting to the point where you can barely get it up, and then you're still trying, and then you get to the point where it's just not moving. No matter what you do, everything you put into it, it's just not moving. And that's where you kind of squeeze and hold, because mechanically your effort and the resistance have reached an equilibrium. And then you try to squeeze. And then you go into the next one. And you might not get it quite as high because you're tired, fatigue is kicking in, but you get everything you have as high as you can, and you squeeze. And then you keep going, and every rep you might reduce a little bit of the range of motion. And the more you practice this, the more you'll be able to say, okay, this is typically how failure works on this movement. And eventually, I mean, I haven't done upright rows very much at all. Eventually, you'll just know sort of how a movement is going to happen, because you've done other stuff, you just have a lot of experience, you can feel it during the set. Every set is a little bit different, but being able to give a super high quality effort throughout an entire set, even when it gets difficult, especially when it gets difficult, is super important. So I see a lot of people where there's no slowdown at all. They're not even getting reps beyond failure. They're not even getting to failure. And so they're either doing tons of volume, or they're just not growing, or they think I've hit some kind of limit, or they start taking drugs. I mean, there are a million things that someone can try to do, but eventually you're going to have to learn to train hard if you want to get the most out of yourself, right?
100%. And although I'm very excited to employ this into my own training, it comes with a caveat.
Yeah.
Not for every single exercise. I think it goes without saying, because on the surface, people will hear this and be, I'm gonna do this for everything.
Yeah.
You're not doing this on a barbell squat.
Yeah.
You're not doing this on a bench press by yourself.
Yep.
You need to use some common sense.
Yeah.
We don't have to make a 15-minute video on what are the best things to fail on. You know common sense, what you should and shouldn't do. Mainly isolation movements,
Yep.
mainly accessory-based compound exercise as well, that are safe to fail.
Exactly, yeah. If someone is picking a movement that they can't safely fail on to demonstrate they can train to failure, that's probably not a very good option. You know, if you're doing some kind of pendulum squat that would squish you like a bug in the bottom position, well, you're gonna know that. It's gonna be in the back of your mind, as it should be, but it's also a poor choice to choose if you're trying to go to failure. Same thing with a barbell squat or Romanian deadlift. For a lot of these movements, you just don't need to go as close to failure to get what you want out of them, and it also just doesn't really make sense to do that. The issue is that people are treating all of their movements like a barbell squat being done by a powerlifter. If someone's a powerlifter and they're keeping 2, 3, 4, 5 reps in reserve, that's totally fine. It actually makes sense for them. But when someone sees that and they start doing this on their cable curls or their upright rows or their lateral raises, that is where they're just not going to be getting as much as they could out of those movements.
Because you'd see this technique which looks on the surface like ego lifting. It looks improper because it's not full range of motion.
Yeah.
If you were to come across these final reps that we're doing, I like to call it similar to the effective reps model,
right,
which became popular those last 3 to 5 reps, where say on a compound exercise, you're at that point of being close to failure, if not, 1 rep in reserve, give or take. Those are the effective reps. Those are the ones that are going to make you strong and bigger.
Do you want to build muscle with calisthenics? Shop FitnessFAQs and transform your physique to the next level.
I almost feel reborn in the sense that now these effective reps are when I'm reaching this failure point of muscular failure and trying to get that isometric at the top. And honestly, there's so much untapped, dormant potential for muscle growth from doing this technique.
Yeah, they're almost two sides of the same coin. Whereas before you look at, failure is that end point. So I'm going, now I'm to failure. On a lot of movements, again, not all of them, but a lot of them, that's sort of just the beginning. Oh, now I hit failure, let's see what I can do beyond that, right? And if someone is a beginner, you can still gain muscle, even keeping reps away from failure, right? But I think a lot of intermediates, they get caught in that trap of, I was keeping 2 to 3 reps in reserve on everything, and I was growing fine as a beginner, because the stimulus is so novel and they're sensitive to it, and you can grow, but at a certain point that stops working. And you're gonna have to go closer to failure. And when you're more advanced, again, on some movements, it can absolutely be beneficial to go beyond failure or to use a little bit of body English, using those partials, perhaps rest pause, using these more advanced techniques in order to get more out of every single set.
The simple, practical takeaway for people is to do this on your final set of each exercise, because that way you'll get quality work in on your first 1-2 sets, and then you can guarantee that the muscle in question that you want to target the most is the limiting factor on the final set. And then over time you can start to do this on your second last set. Or if you're a freak like Jeff, you just hammer every single thing as much as you can within reason.
And this is where ease into it. It's like any training stimulus. You wouldn't go from not running at all to running 60 miles a week or something. The rule on there is like 10% extra mileage per week or something. I would say probably more like 5 is probably more suitable. Take your time with it. And the same thing with the weight training. Pick something that's a relatively easy exercise to add this kind of stuff to make it more difficult. If something is already a difficult exercise, it's already there. The squat is already there. It doesn't need to be made more challenging. If someone is doing a drop set on a squat or partials on a squat, that's weird. That's weird.
Don't be weird.
Yeah, why are you trying to make something already difficult and challenging excessively challenging, right? So you want to add stuff Oh, it's a skier, you can go beyond failure. Oh, it's a cable lateral raise, you can make it more challenging through these techniques, almost to try to even it out with these big movements.
If you had to recommend some movements and muscles that work most effectively for this, oh, Jesus, those arms are just, I'm getting intimidated over here, boys. I'm just gonna put a coat on now. What are the best ones people can jump into and see success?
Yeah, so I flex my arms for a reason. I think arms in general, they do respond well to this kind of stuff. If someone's treating their arms like their quads, I think they're gonna have lagging arms in general. Usually just smaller movements, so isolations, sometimes machines. And so side delts, rear delts, triceps, biceps, forearms, you know, someone's doing some kind of wrist curl or reverse grip curl, and you just go to failure, I think you're at some point gonna want a little bit more than that. Maybe calves. There was actually, I don't cite studies that much, but there was a study saying those who went beyond failure to where they could barely move, because the top part is the most challenging. And so they would go to failure and then just keep going. That group did see more growth, which sometimes you read studies like, wow, that's interesting. I read that study, I was like, yep, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me, because I've done it and I've seen the differences myself, right? In general, if something is most difficult in the contracted position, it's gonna be a little bit more failure friendly. So something like a chest supported row, it's challenging in that contracted position. So if you're failing, you're really only failing a tiny sliver of the range of motion. Right? It's just that top position. And so if you just say, okay, well, technical failure, that's what matters, you're gonna stop the set and it won't be that stimulative, because you haven't stimulated the bottom or the lower bottom or the middle or the upper middle or the most of the upper. You've really only stimulated this tiny little fraction. And so whether you're doing a pull down or most rows, you know, just allow yourself to fail, give an honest effort. Don't say, we'll fail it. No, like really give it everything you have. That's the biggest part of it, to get the activation. But then, you know, give yourself an extra rep or two to see how high you get. And again, try to pause at the top where your effort and the available oomph that you have is going to equal the mechanics, right? So those are kind of reaching each other, and they're going to reach each other at a certain point, and that's going to reduce your range of motion every single rep. But the thing is, you got to fight it. You got to fight it every single rep just to see how high you can get. You did a great job of that.
Boom.
Because you know how to push it anyway, right? But some people who have never experienced that, it'll take them realistically probably a few years.
Yeah.
To where they like they're really digging into the muscle and giving everything they have. That's a skill.
Yeah.
It's a skill.
But it's an absolute game changer. And I don't say that just as a marketing technique. This will make you 200% stronger. Legit, no matter if your goal is purely hypertrophy or if you'd like to have more muscle mass to be strong, it really makes sense if you want to maximize growth.
Yep.
Doing this on those accessories, friendly movements for it, like rows, isolations, it is going to make your progress so much more. And you'll look at training completely differently, and you'll compare it to your regular way of doing tricep extensions, bicep curls, and you'll think to yourself, there is so much more for me to give. And I can't wait to see more people using this technique, because I think we'll have bigger natties in the mix if they actually train hard, which is what it's all about.
Oh yeah, the standards they're always going up, and they're going to keep going up, I think.
Training to failure doesn't make you a failure.
There you go.